So a lot of options here for you that you can really tweak and configure however you want. So if maybe you're not getting the benchmark results that you expect, you might be able to tweak it to increase and boost that performance even more. Hey everyone, Digital David here. Today on this episode of Newegg Now, I'm going to be benchmarking our brand new Cooler Master PC build. Shout out to Cooler Master for sending us a bunch of the great products that you see here. If you're interested in anything that you see here, the links to them will be in my video description below. So we're going to be taking this through a couple different benchmark tests today. But first, let's go over all the parts and pieces that make up this build. So powering this build literally is the Cooler Master MWE Gold 850 V2. This is a fully modular 850 watt power supply with multiple variations available online depending on what you're after and how power hungry your build is. Cooling this build is the Cooler Master Master Liquid ML240L. Our case is the beautiful Cooler Master Master Case H500M. Our CPU is the AMD Ryzen 5 5600X, that's 6 cores, 12 threads. The motherboard we use for this build is the MSI Pro B550A Pro. So with that board, it only has one USB 3.0 header. If you want to take advantage of all the USB on this case with the front panel connector, you'll need to get a motherboard that has two USB 3.0 headers, or you could always pick up a PCIe expansion card you could use that would have an additional header for you. The RAM we're using is the Corsair Vengeance LPX 16 gigs, so 2 sticks of 8. Our GPU is the Asus TUF Gaming GeForce RTX 3060 RIP stock. Our M.2 drive is the Samsung 970 EVO Plus 250 gigabytes. That's a PCIe 3.0 M.2 drive when this board supports M.2 drives with Gen 4. So I would encourage you to take advantage of a Gen 4 drive if possible. And then lastly, Windows 10 Home is powering the build for our OS. Without the GPU, the total is going to be around $1,100, and whatever you can find a GPU for, that's going to be your final price. So without a GPU, you could always do a similar processor like the 5600G that has integrated graphics to keep it right at this price point. Or again, you can increase the price point by buying a GPU if you can ever find one in stock and you don't pay an arm and a leg for it. So that's a quick look at all the parts and components of this build. So when working on the motherboard, I highly recommend that you read through the user guide and manual at least one time to get familiar with all the parts, components, the layout, and where everything is going to connect. So we're going to be installing our CPU, our M.2 drive, and our 2 sticks of RAM. So for the cooler, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install the fans. Pay attention to how everything's going to be laid out with your build. So for me, what I envision is it's going to look just like this on our CPU. So these lines are going to be on this side. This is going to be routed out and through to the back side of the case. This will be positioned like this, right? So this will be mounted to the top of the case. This will be on our CPU. So with that being said, with this layout, we want to make sure our fan wires are going to be pointed that direction too. So you're going to take your fan with the Cooler Master logo and branding. That's going to be face down. And I want our cables to come out and down and around right here. So we're going to drop both of our fans in place, just like you see right here. We're going to line up the holes. And then we're going to take 4 of these per fan, drop them in place, and tighten them down. Now it's time to install the 2 brackets for our AMD CPU and the 4 included screws. I want to remove that exhaust fan, and we're going to swap it out with this fan. So now I wanted to show you guys up close everything that I've connected so far. The first one you can see, CPU fan right here, that's from the cooler. Then you can see we got 2 of our system fans connected right here. Both are routed through the back. The first one we have connected is the included splitter cable we have that's going to connect 2 of these fans up here around the back side. Then you can see USB Type-C's connected. Further down here, we have our JFP1, you can see in the corner. That's going to be our hard drive LEDs, our power switch, that sort of thing. So just refer to the user guide manual for the correct layout. Then you can see we have our J Rainbow plugged in. That's going to be our addressable RGB hub. We have another fan plugged in. That's going to be a fan splitter for the 2 200 millimeter fans. connected through the back side. Here's our one USB 3.0 header. Here's our USB 2.0 header that we have connected to our addressable RGB hub. And then moving further along, you can see we have our HD audio connected right there. So that's a close-up look of all the cable connections on this side of the motherboard. So on the power supply unit itself, you can see I went ahead, I already connected all the cables that we're going to be using for this build. So we have our CPU power cable, we have a PCIe power cable for our GPU. You can see we have our main motherboard power cable as well connected. And then I went ahead, I only added one hard drive power connector right here because we're only going to need one for our RGB hub. So the back bracket's on. Let's go ahead, let's route our cables through and slide it in. So now looking at the motherboard in the front of the case, we can see our CPU connector right there. Coming along here, you can see our main motherboard connector. And then last but not least, on this side, you can see we have our PCIe power coming up right through there. So check it out, you can see we got the PC built. Love how everything turned out. Plenty of room. We could even do a bigger cooler if we wanted in the future. We could do custom water cooling. We could add more fans. You can see down here, I went ahead, I removed the cover so we could expose our power supply, but still keep the shroud intact. This is great if you have RGB or a custom screen. You may have noticed I swapped out one of our exhaust fans. So this is the Cooler Master Fan SF120M. So we got addressable RGB just like the rest of our fans in this case. Plenty of room, easy to work with, and again, plenty of room for future expansion as well. Now let's go ahead, let's jump right in and benchmark it. First up, really quickly, we're gonna look at CPU-Z, and you can see our single thread score of 630 and our multi-thread score of 4973. I'll also click through the CPU in case you wanna see any of this data. Feel free to pause the screen. Here's our main board, and you can see the memory tab as well. Now you can see our Cinebench R23 score. So we got a multi-core score of 1122.8 and a single core score of 1518. Down below you can see our ranking with the multi-core score and where it fares compared to other CPUs from both Intel and AMD. Same can be said right here for the single core score. Almost beating the 11th Gen i7. And then a nice compilation of other scores from other Intel and AMD CPUs. Now you can see our Geekbench 5 results right here. First up, our single core score, we got 1617, and our multi-core score, we got 7744. Let's go ahead, let's look a little bit further down on the page. You can see we have a nice breakdown of our single core performance right here. So check that out. Feel free to pause the screen at anything you want to look at. Here are the rest of the results for the single core score. Now we can go further down to view our multi-core score results. So check that out. You can see them right here. Same thing. Feel free to pause the screen if you want to look at something else in more detail. And there's the rest of our multi-core score results. So now you can see our SSD benchmarking results right here. It's advertised to get read speeds up to 3,500 megabytes a second and write speeds up to 2,300 megabytes a second. And you can see our actual results right here. So first up with AS SSD, you can see we got a read score of 2,900 and a write score of 2,200. With Crystal Diskmark, you can see we got a read score of 3,400 and a write score of 2,300. So we're definitely within the ballpark advertised range. Now we're taking a look at MSI Center so we can see some real-time hardware monitoring. First up, we got our CPU usage, then our CPU frequency. We have our core temp, our socket temp, and our CPU fan. You also may notice over here, you can see our RAM frequency of 3,200 megahertz. Now I got the BIOS pulled up really quickly so you can get a feel for the menu options that we have so we can really tweak and overclock this build if we want. First up, we're in easy mode, so you can see our CPU right here, all of our key tech specs. We also have our monitoring up here as well. Then we can view our memory. You can see our current frequency, which is what our RAM supports. Here's our storage. Then you can see we got our fan info as well too, so we can see all of that right here. A help section, and then we have our different profiles up top. So we can select advanced if we want. Now we can tweak all of our settings right here. Tons of different options, all of our overclocking as well. Everything readily accessible for you. This is where you're going to go if you want to change your XMP profile to adjust your RAM speed settings. That's what we did. So we selected profile 1, which had the correct speed for us, 3200 megahertz. We also have our flash options right here for the BIOS. So a lot of options here for you that you can really tweak and configure however you want. So if maybe you're not getting the benchmark results that you expect, you might be able to tweak it to increase and boost that performance even more. So overall, I'm very pleased with this build so far and how everything came together and how it's performing. Obviously, in the future, there are a couple of key upgrades we could make to this to get even better performance. One is going to be adding some extra sticks of RAM. We still have 2 available slots. The second one, and probably the biggest boost of performance, would be adding a Gen 4 M.2 drive and swapping out the current one that we have. Then we could do other obvious changes like upgrading the CPU down the road or the GPU. But so far, so good. Very impressed with this build. And with the 850 watt power supply, we have plenty of headroom to add anything else we want in the future. Well, that concludes our video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget the product link will be in our video description below. Please go ahead, check it out, and do your shopping from there. Any purchase made through that link helps support our channel at no additional cost to you. So we're really grateful and thankful for all of your support. While you're at it, can you go ahead and hit that like button for us? And subscribe to our channel. We have new content coming out daily, and we don't want you to miss anything. Please go ahead and give us a follow online and make it a clean sweep. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. You can message us on WeChat, check out our website, and join our free newsletter. Thank you guys so much for being here. Don't forget, new content daily, and we can't wait to see you in our next video.